Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm looking at the Scripture Citation Index by BYU, and I'm doing a search for the term second coming in general conference talks, and I want to share what I found. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you end up liking it. Make sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Also make sure to share this with anyone that finds this kind of stuff interesting. Okay, so here we have the BYU Scripture Index, where you can search the scriptures. You can also search talks. You can also search how many times scriptures are cited in talks and who is doing the citation. So what I did is, if you're not familiar with the website, in this panel on the right side, at the very bottom, you have these different icons, right? The citation index, this is like all the scriptures, or sorry, yeah, all the scriptures, and then their who references these different scriptures. You got library, speakers, and then search. So what I did is I looked for specifically the term second coming. So this is not a comprehensive search that I did. So because sometimes they won't say second coming, they'll say something like when he comes again and stuff like that. I just did just straight, just second coming, just simple. Okay. And I ran the search from 1970 until present. And I just wanted to see how many times does the term second coming come up each year. And this is what I found. Okay. So in 1970, 7 times. Okay. 71, 7 times. 72, 7 times. 73, it goes down to 3. 74 goes up to 8. 75, 7. 6, 6, 6, 6. And now we're in the 80s, starting with 1980. 5, 6, 5, 3, 2, 2, 6, 4, 4, 3. So you can already see that it looks like it was talked about a lot more in the 70s than it was in the 80s. Okay, let's continue. Now we're in the 90s. 4, 4, 2, 6, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, and now we're in the 2000s. So something kind of interesting happens. From the 70s into the 90s, it's almost like it kind of tapers off. With the exception of kind of like the early 90s, it's kind of there, especially in 93, but it's nothing approaching what things were like back in the 70s, okay, where we had all these 7s and 8s and 6s. In the 90s, it's more like 3s, 2s, and 1s, maybe some 4s. Okay, so you would expect, if I back then, if I was to like make a prediction, I would think, oh, okay, well, every year that goes by, we're getting closer and closer to the second coming. So they're probably going to talk about it more and more in general conference, right? And again, we're just looking for just this one phrase, so it's not like a perfect research into this, but I think it is telling, and I'm about to show you why. So you would think that the term second coming would just increase more and more over time. Certainly from the 70s going forward as you're approaching the turn of the millennium, right? But here we are in the late 90s, and all we have is 2, 2, 1, 3, 2. The whole second half of that decade is pretty quiet when it comes to second coming showing up in the conference talks. Okay, so let's continue. Let's see what happens as we go forward. So now we're in the 2000s. 4, 2, 3, 2, 3, 5, 3, 2, 2, 9. Or I mean, in 2009, 3. So the 2000s look like they're even quieter than the 90s. So it's like tapering off even more. So 70s, it's really strong. 7, 7, 8, 6, 5. 80s, 5, 3, 2, 6, 4. 90s, uh, you know, 6, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 4. And then the 2000s, 2, 3, 2, 3, 5, 3, 2, 2, 3. So it's weird. It's weird. Don't you think it's weird? I think it's weird. Okay, so what happens in the next decade? Well, let's see. Starting with 2010. 3, 5. Okay, that's the strongest that we've seen since 2005. In 2012, 1. Now, I think that's funny because as far as like the world is concerned, everyone was looking at 2012 as like a doomsday year because of the Mayan calendar, right? And it's funny the lack of talking about the second coming in 2012. Okay, 2013, 3, 5, 4, 3, 3. Okay, now in 2018, we're up to 8. When was the last time that we saw 8? Let's go all the way back, and we are going back pretty far. The only other time the only other time that it's been that high, starting from the 70s, the only other time was in 1974. So that's interesting. And it's interesting because, okay, so this is the only other time it's happened since the 70s. And 2018, what happened in 2018? Oh, that's right. President Nelson became prophet. President Nelson became prophet in 2018. And all of a sudden we have this spike. Now, we're looking at it in relative terms, right? Just generally how often it shows up each year. Well, that's a lot. That is a lot as we look through this whole history. Okay, so what happens as we go forward? 2019, 9. Okay, now we're setting a record. If we're looking just from 1970 until the present, 2019 set a record. Okay, what happens the next year? 12. 2020 shatters the record. It shatters it. um, okay, so do you sense that things may be changed around the time that President Nelson became prophet? I think so. We have 8, 9, 12. What about 2021? 8. Okay, but that's still really high because, again, the only other time since the 70s that we've gotten up to 8 was in 1974. That's the only other time. The other two times are 2018 and 2021. So since 2018, every single one of these years has either matched the high of 1974 of 8 or exceeded it with 9 in 2019 and 12 in 2020. So what's going to happen in 2022? Who the heck knows? We're just going to have to wait for conference and have that stuff put on this scripture citation index, and I'll be looking forward to looking at those numbers. Now, I may in future videos do this with other key phrases and words and stuff like that, so you'll have to give me time to kind of think about it. But I think that even just this small little simple search is pretty telling. Don't you? Don't you think that's interesting? That since 2018, it's just like been bam, 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 bam. Something's changed. I've told you guys before that I felt like the Monson years, the President Monson years, were kind of quiet. And in terms of this specific search, they were pretty quiet. But what surprises me even more is that the Hinckley years, the President Hinckley years, was quiet, right? You have to go back to the President Benson, and before him, I think it was President Kimball. I'm not sure. But this is the time of uh, Elder Bruce R. McConkie was the 70s. And it's interesting because this is the time right here where the BYU Jerusalem Center is being constructed. In fact, let's refresh ourselves on that because I might be off. Let's see. BYU Jerusalem Center Wikipedia. Okay. So plans to build the Center for Students were announced by LDS Church President Spencer W. Kimball in 1979. Okay, so it was announced that it's highlighted from my previous video that I did about the BYU Jerusalem Center. So let's go back over here. So it was announced in 79. Okay, that's after all of this going on. You know, I guess you could kind of look at like one way that you could look at this. I mean, it's not perfect, of course, but you can look at this as in terms of like magnitudes or like earthquakes. So you have all these 7.0 earthquakes happening, and then 8.0. Uh, you know, it's just fun to kind of think of it that way. But it's interesting that you have all this talk of the second coming, and then in 79 that's when it's proposed, the BYU Jerusalem Center. And then let's see, by 1984 the church had obtained a 49-year lease on the land and had begun construction. This let's see, construction to continue. And okay, the center opened to students in May 1988, so that's not until all the way over here. But like I pointed out, the 80s compared to the 90s, there was a lot more talk going on of the second coming. So it's just, I don't know. It's okay. Now when did let's see, Millennial Messiah, Bruce R. McConkie? When was that? When did that come out? I already forgot. 1982. So 1982 is when that was written. And look at that. You got this spike in 1982. It's hard to say, of course, if that's because of his book, but yeah, that's interesting. But around this time of the BYU Jerusalem Center, okay, 666,565, and then after that, things just kind of like they go really quiet. They're so surprised. Things are so surprisingly quiet during these the 2000s. You would think that that's like when the hype would be, when everyone's like wanting to talk about it. Of course, they're privy to revelation for the church and interacting with other general authorities. So that's what's going to, probably inspire them to talk about the second coming. And I think that's what's going on here in 2018 and afterward, because boy, has there been a lot of talk. And I'm not just talking about the second coming. Now I'm talking in general terms, talking about things like becoming Zion, right? Because we know that we have to become Zion, uh, be a Zion people for Christ to come. Um, Getting rid of contention and so forth. There's been a lot of talk of Enoch recently, and we know that Enoch is going to come back with his city as part of the second coming. Um, there's been so many things. I've done a whole channel now. I've done a whole channel about this stuff. So it's fascinating. We really are living in amazing times. Now, one thing I want to point out, okay, there's been debate about the half hour of silence in heaven, right? That's what a lot of people are looking for. Let me pull it up. Scriptures, DNC 88, verse 95. Sorry, bear with me. And there shall be silence in heaven for the space of half an hour. sorry, you know what? Let me make this bigger. And there shall be silence in heaven for the space of half an hour, and immediately after shall the curtain of heaven be unfolded as a scroll is unfolded, after it is rolled up, and the face of the Lord shall be unveiled. And the saints that are upon the earth who are alive shall be quickened and be caught up to meet him. This is what a lot of us are waiting for. Um, I am waiting for hopefully my back to get fixed because I'm tired of this slip disc, and I'm also tired of sleep apnea and so many other things. So I'm hoping that this will entail some kind of fixing of my body. But you know, whatever the case, this is going to be a very exciting event. And uh, it's just, why was I even talking about this? Um, I lost my train of thought. I don't know. I don't know what I was talking about. I don't. I don't know what I was talking about. Um, oh yeah, the silence. Okay, the silence in heaven. There's been discussion about this, about what this means, and there's different theories. If you go by God's time and you calculate it out to man's years, it's close to 21 years. If I remember right, it's like 20.83 years. So when we're looking at this here, if we're just going off of how many times the second coming phrase comes up in general conference, well, this was a pretty quiet time. Okay, it was kind of loud. It was definitely loud in the 70s. It was kind of loud in the 80s, and then a little bit in the early 90s. Okay, still kind of loud, and then after that, it just goes quiet. It just goes quiet. Goes quiet, quiet, and really quiet in 2012. And then bam, in 2018, loud again. So, you know, there may or may not be a correlation between this and the half hour of silence, but this is kind of what I was trying to say. Like in the Monson years, it just didn't seem like a whole lot in terms of the second coming was being talked about. Not like what we're seeing now, and that's not to say that President Monson wasn't receiving revelation. He would have been setting up a lot of the things that are happening right now, the different changes that have come about in the church. We've covered that on the channel before. That all these things that are happening, it's not just like President Nelson becoming president and then like, okay, let's do this and this and this. I've been having all these ideas ever since I became an apostle. Let's change this. No, these things were in the works for a long time. So if anything, this quiet phase right here, if you can call it that, uh, probably was a big time of preparation and planning and revelation and talking about things. And now in 2018 and onward, it's time for action. We're actually doing things. So, okay, well, those are my thoughts. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Make sure to share it because I'm sure there's going to be other people that are interested in this. Maybe it'll wake somebody up. Maybe someone will be like, wow, you know what? Times really are different right now. Maybe it's time to wake up and start taking this seriously. And I'll talk to you guys later.